Well, Congressman Jim Jordan is somebody that we work with very closely at the Heritage Foundation. As the chairman of the Republican Study Committee, he leads a group of House conservatives who are working on a number of issues to cut spending, to lower taxes, prevent tax increases, and solve the fiscal challenges that our country faces. You probably have all heard about his background as a wrestling champion in high school, earning a career record of 150-1. Went on to wrestle in the NCAAs, came to Congress as a fiscal warrior and somebody who led the RSC's Budget and Spending Task Force before assuming this new role. He, as I understand, comes directly from the Oversight Committee, so we appreciate you making the time today, Congressman, to be with us. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you.
Please join me in welcoming.
Okay. I tell every group, don't clap. You haven't heard me talk yet, but thank you. It's a great day. We're at the Heritage Foundation. The sun is shining, and Artur Davis has found Jesus and come to the Republican Party. Right? God bless you, brother. It's great to have you on the. Not that we're right all the time. We're not. Well, everyone in this room knows that.
More than the other side.
Well, much more. That's exactly right. And the American people are going to say so on Election Day. I'm confident. I did come from the Oversight Committee, and I do appreciate a chance to be with you. I'll be brief, and you can ask questions of both Republicans up here in just a few minutes. But I mean, it's amazing. This hearing, we've done a series of hearings in our subcommittee on this Department of Energy loan guarantee program. And you talk about what's wrong with government right now. It's stuff like this. Think about this, 26 companies in the Department of Energy, 26 companies, 26 different projects got your tax dollars. Loan guarantee got your tax dollars. 22 of those 26, this is a $15 billion program. 22 of those companies had a credit rating of BB-, which is a fancy way of saying junk. No private capital, no venture capital, no private money could go. But it's okay to put your tax dollars behind these companies. Cylinder went bankrupt. Bright Sources have problems. Beacon Power. I mean, it is amazing. And we just had another hearing today where we have emails. Now think about this. And the American people are figuring this out. And again, it's why I'm very optimistic about what I think is going to happen in November. But we've got emails from Bright Source is the best example. The CEO of Bright Source sent an email to Jonathan Silver at the Department of Energy asking, now think about this, asking the Department of Energy, enclosed the email was a draft letter from the chairman of the board of Bright Source, John Bryson, who became Commerce Secretary. He'd actually been in the news of late, but this has nothing to do with that. But a draft letter from John Bryson to the White House Chief of Staff, Bill Daley, asking Department of Energy, hey, edit this letter we're thinking about sending to the White House Chief of Staff and talking about the loan guarantee they were seeking to get your tax dollar. I mean, we have this kind of stuff. So it just, on and on it goes, but we just came from that here. And again, I think it underscores how critical this election is. Look, Polly and I had a chance, my wife and I had a chance last November, and I'll just give a little context, and like I say, we'll take questions. Had a chance to travel to Israel. We were in Israel in the first week of November. We were there the week that the IAEA actually announced that Iran was getting very close. It's always a great time to be in Israel, but this was a particularly fascinating week to be there. And one of the things that came through loud and clear, didn't matter whether we were talking to folks in the government, folks in the private sector, they all said one thing. They said the best way, the absolute best way for the United States of America to help our country is for America to stay strong. They said when you're strong, we're better. When you're strong, we are safer. And the truth is, and this is what I think sometimes what the left misses, the truth is when the United States of America leads, the world's a better place. With our values, our history, our heritage, it's a scary world out there. Watch the news any time of the day. But it's a less scary, it's a better place when we lead the world. And the simple fact is this, and this is, again, I think what's at stake in this election. You cannot lead militarily, you cannot lead diplomatically if you first don't lead economically. And right now, I would argue this administration is doing everything wrong in every major policy area, making it difficult for us to be the economic leader of the world, and therefore difficult for us to lead in other ways. I mean, you just run down the policies: tax policy, regulatory policy, energy policy, monetary policy, fiscal policy, healthcare, every major policy area. How many in the tax? I do this in every group I talk to. How many think we need a new tax code? Yeah, I get the same response. Almost everyone raises their hands, and those who are too lazy to raise their hands nod their head. But everybody gets it. I mean, think about on the personal side, any tax code that says we're going to allow 47% of the population not to participate in the main tax is broken. And then on the corporate side, any tax code that says we're going to tax American corporations at the highest corporate rate in the world is stupid. So if it's broken and stupid, you might want to throw it out and start over. I mean, think about that. And then you just regulatory. Everyone know well. This is any business person you talk to will tell you the regulation is killing us. Energy policy. We just talked about this crazy loan guarantee program, green energy initiative this administration has done, and the impact that has this administration has had on with the EPA on coal and other fossil fuels. I mean, you cannot. Now think about this. You cannot be the leading economy in the world if you don't have readily available energy at affordable cost. It's the linchpin. It's critical. You got to have that. And yet this administration, with what they're doing at the Department of Energy and a whole host, the failure to approve the Keystone and a whole host of issues, just underscores how critical and how wrong they are and how critical this issue is. Monetary policy, at some point, we're going to have to get back to a strong dollar. We are. You all know who the biggest purchaser of Treasury bills is now? Who do you think it is?
The Treasury.
Yeah, we're buying them ourselves. I mean, everyone says China most of the time, but there's always people in the audience who know too. We're buying them ourselves. At some point, we're going to have to get back to a strong dollar. We're going to have to do it. And then, of course, fiscal policy, and we can talk a little bit about healthcare. That's on everyone's mind as well. But fiscal policy, just a couple numbers I always share with folks. We now have a debt bigger than our GDP. Whenever you have a debt bigger in your economy, it's tough to be the leading economy in the world. It's scary. Then the good news is everyone else is in bad shape, so people are still investing in ours and buying our treasuries. But there's no guarantee that has to continue. At some point, we're going to have to cut spending. Any of you ever seen? I shared this on the floor, and at first, any of you ever seen the movie 1776? A great musical. Any of you ever seen that show? You should watch it. Yeah, it came out in 1976 at the Bicentennial. So it's an old show, but there's a great scene in there. Jefferson has drafted the Declaration, and they're in the Congress there in Independence Hall, and they're marking it up. And it's a long, tedious process, and it's driving Adams crazy because he's like, we got to declare independence. We got to go win this. We want to start this experiment in liberty we call America. And he's all fired up. And they're going through this line by line. And someone says, well, if we say it that way, Parliament may not like that. It could kind of tick them off. And then someone else says, yeah, and we might want to change this sentence and this paragraph because King George will look at this in this way. And then someone says, yeah, and we also have to be concerned about deep-sea fishing rights. And finally, Adams he goes, it's a revolution, dang it. We're going to have to offend somebody. The same thing applies to we're going broke. We're going to have to cut spending. You have to change. Every family understands this. Every village, every township, every county, every city, every business, every state understands. The only entity that doesn't seem to get the message is the one that, oh, by the way, has a $16 trillion debt, the federal government. We're going to have to do it. And that's one of the things we've been focused on at the RSC. Putting forth a plan that actually gets us to balance within a reasonable period of time. You can't do it overnight, but it shouldn't take 28, 30 years. It shouldn't be a budget that never gets to balance like the president proposed. The one we put forward gets there in 5. And we think that's reasonable, and we think it's something you have to do. And the quicker you get after doing any problem, the quicker you get after fixing it, the easier it is to get it done. And that's what we're focused on. I'll finish with this, and then we'll take your questions. John Fund and I spoke at an event in Ohio about a year ago. He made a great point. And many of you probably know this, being here at Heritage. He said it's every third generation that has to do something big in the country. And he took us right back there to where Adams and Jefferson and these guys were, Independence Hall, where those group of Americans said, we're going to start a place that is going to be different than any other place ever, any other nation ever in the world. A place where freedom actually means something. And they prevailed when no one thought they could beat Great Britain. No one thought they could win it, and they did it. 3 generations later, American says we can deal with the evil of slavery. We will get rid of this evil, and we can keep the Union together when it tried to split apart. And they were successful. 3 generations after them, those Americans said we can deal with the Great Depression, we can get through it, and we can win the Second War and the evils of Nazism, Imperial Japan, and everything. And they were successful. And now, here we are, 3 generations later, and it's our turn. And it will not be easy. I learned a long time ago, anything worth doing is never easy. It takes work, it takes effort, it takes sacrifice. It's just the way God made this place. But Americans have always risen to the occasion, and I'm confident we can do it again. So with that, we'll take your questions. Is that what we're supposed to do? Is that right? Okay, that's what I thought. So, and you can stand up too, Artur, and we'll fire away. Or I can sit down, however you want us to do it. Okay.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. We got the microphone goes first. Yeah.
Lachlan Marquet with the Heritage Foundation. We had a post up this morning about a couple of emails that were sent from an Energy Department advisor to Prologus, I believe is how it's pronounced.
Prologus, yeah.
That were confidential, actually marked as confidential. Is that, did you learn anything interesting from their CEO this morning? Should we be particularly concerned about those emails?
I think we should be concerned certainly in a general sense. I asked their Mr. Rakowicz, their CEO, just a few minutes ago about that very subject. And I said, we have it going both ways. We have a private company asking the Department of Energy, edit this letter we're thinking about sending to the White House Chief of Staff, which is highly unusual. And then we also now have the Department of Energy giving internal documents to the private sector, people who are trying to get loans. It's almost like, and I said this in committee, it's almost like the teacher saying, hey, to a couple of the students, not the whole class, saying to a couple of the students, hey, here are the answers for the exam. We're going to give this to you. This is probably how you should structure your application and structure the things you're saying about. I mean, that's unbelievable that that's going on in the United States of America. And again, I think this whole issue, coupled with a lot of other things I've talked about, is what is involved in this campaign, and will be front and center over the next few months.
Ralph Benko from American Principles Project and a columnist for Forbes.com. And I'm delighted, Congressman, that you mentioned monetary reform as part of the 5 different platforms. As a veteran of the Reagan Revolution, there were 2 major elements that took the stock market up from 1,000 when we started, back when you were still a kid, okay, to 14,000 at its peak. And it was the Mundell-Laffer hypothesis. It was cutting marginal tax rates and restoring health to the dollar.
Yep.
Okay, the I am extremely pleased that Representative Kevin Brady has proposed a Sound Dollar Act with 42 co-sponsors. Are you one of them?
I couldn't tell you. I may be. I know I've just
check into it. Okay,
be, yeah.
The Republican Party has a wonderful opportunity to move for a healthy dollar.
Yeah.
Okay, Glenn Hubbard, who is an advisor to Governor Romney, is on record as calling for a rule-based monetary policy rather than discretionary activism.
Yep.
There's a clear distinction between the Republicans and the Democrats on this. There has been no economic growth for 10 years because we've had the common denominator. We've had tax cuts and tax increases and this and that, but we've had a sick dollar. So putting a healthy dollar into your agenda is wonderful. I commend you for it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I agree. I mean, again, it's no secret what has to be done. You got to have a common sense tax code, simpler, fairer, flatter tax code. You got to have reasonable regulation, not excessive regulation. You got to have a common sense energy policy, strong dollar policy, and then start scaling back. You don't have to balance right away, but you got to turn the ship and get it headed in the right direction, which is what Paul's budget does. Starts heading things in the right. You do those things, and just like you referenced, we will take off with economic growth. Let the American entrepreneur do what they've been doing for 200 and some years. Grow this economy and create jobs. It will happen. Our job is to not create jobs, but to create a structure that's conducive to job growth. And right now, I would argue, as I briefly talked about, that this administration is doing just the opposite.
Can I have one thing?
You can definitely.
Yeah.
Let me add one thing, because I think it's important. Everybody in the room understands this. One of the, Jim, you touched on it. I'll say a little bit more about it. One of the big problems with the way the Obama administration's economic team looks at domestic policy, they think there are 2 combinations of answers to every problem under the sun. The first one is to grow the government footprint, and the second one is to raise marginal tax rates on, depending on the day of the week and how the moon and the stars align, either over $1 million or $500,000. I'll just throw this out to you. We have a big problem right now with hunger among children. You know, you've seen a lot of the specials on TV. It's a big problem. More children are hungry right now than at any point in this country's history. There are 28 government programs that deal with the problem of children who are facing hunger. How can you have 28 programs ostensibly tackling a problem, and it's worse now than it's ever been, and by the Democrats' way of thinking about things, the good guys are running things from their perspective? If you care about the issue of poverty and you're on the left, well, the good guys are in charge. 28 programs, and the problem is worse than it's ever been. So, I was in Congress with Jim for a good little bit, and he's still there now. God bless his soul. The big thing that you wrestle with when you're in Congress day in and day out is people on the other side who tell you all you got to do is raise taxes and just keep growing programs. It doesn't work.
Other questions? Ramon.
Sure. I was counsel at House Administration several years ago, and we're now about to go into this process of subpoenaing the White House for documents. But unlike the Senate, the House does not have the legal authority to enforce its own subpoenas. So we're going to have to rely on the Justice Department to go to court and enforce subpoenas against its White House. And my question is, have we thought about going to the Romney administration and to our friends in the Senate and saying, if we do have a majority, let's pass a law that gives the House the same power as the Senate to enforce its own subpoenas. So in the future, we don't have to rely on what could be a corrupt Justice Department to enforce subpoenas against its own administration.
I haven't thought, the first time I've heard that is now. I did talk to Darrell a little bit this morning about this issue, and I appreciate the good work Darrell's doing on our committee, or leading our committee. But that may be something we do want to explore. So, and I should say now, I did have the opportunity and privilege to serve with Artur, and I commend his courage and leadership and what he's doing. That is just right on target. Thank you. And he was a pleasure to serve with when we were on the Judiciary Committee together.
Congressman, if I could take the prerogative and ask a question about Obamacare. My colleague Nino Chirenko wrote a paper yesterday outlining 3 provisions of Obamacare, the donut hole for Medicare, the pre-existing conditions, and the so-called slacker provision for 26-year-olds. Now, you had some grumblings among even some Republicans saying that they might want to be preserving these. Your thoughts on, regardless of what the Supreme Court does, what the House should do?
Well, I mean, I hope the Supreme Court both gets rid of the individual mandate and throws out the whole law. So I hope that's what happened. If they don't, if they do, if they just do the individual mandate and they leave the rest in place, then we should work to, if in fact the voters do what I think they're going to do this November and keep Republicans in charge of the House, put a new person in the White House and give the Senate back to the Republicans, then we should repeal all of Obamacare and restart the whole debate. And not focus on Washington as the so-called answer to health care, but focus on market solutions. I mean, it's really that basic, and I think when you explain that we want to empower families, we want to empower moms and dads, we want to empower individuals to make their health care decision. I always tell folks the biggest problem with this health care law, why Americans still dislike it so much, is the fundamental fact that this administration missed. Americans don't like being told what to do. That's why we're Americans. We actually think freedom is important. Go back to the guys who started the place. They believed it so much they rebelled against the greatest country in the world at the time. And they were actually a part of a country that had the most freedom, but they wanted more. Americans don't like, people came here because in Europe they said you got to practice your faith a certain way, and they said, no, we don't. We're going to go to America and we're going to do it the way we think the good Lord wants us to. And along comes this administration and the Congress last time, and they said, we're going to tell you how you're going to get your health care. We're going to put 15 people in charge, bureaucrats in Washington. We're going to put someone between you and your doctor. And Americans said, no, you're not. We don't like it. You know the old joke about Americans. When most Americans are traveling, we hate being told to do it so much. Most Americans traveling down the highway, and they see the sign that says 55. For most Americans, that's not the limit. That's the challenge. That's how we look at things, right? And so the government thinks they're going to tell you you're going to get your health care? I mean, you got to be kidding me. So the key is that individual mandate, but we should throw the whole thing out and then structure a again, back to the point, market structure, let individuals and the market help us get to the right solution. It will always be better than big government.
Can I just one thing wrap at healthcare?
Yeah.
You know, look, two quick points. One of them I touched on the quote I read you from the guy who emailed me. One of the things the American people figured out way before most people in Washington, D.C. figured it out, the American people figured out that if you write a 1,000-page bill, that you cannot say with certainty how it is going to play out in the lives of ordinary people. That is why, according to the Wall Street Journal, according to the Washington Post and New York Times of all places, a significant number of private employers are going to drop their plans altogether or are going to go to a plan that's stingier and has higher premiums for people. Remember 4 years ago when Democrats said over and over, this is going to help the 15% who don't have health insurance and the 85 who've got it. Remember when they said, the 85 who got it, nothing will change for you. Now, someone whispered in President Obama's ear and told him that's not really right, so he would change it to, nothing will change for you because of this plan, whatever that meant. The reality is that because of this plan, because of the exchanges it sets up, because of the way those exchanges are administered, it will be easier for the average company that's trying to get by in a dire economy to get rid of its health insurance for people. Now think about that. How do you pass a plan that we're told is the most revolutionary thing for poor and sick people since 1965, and one of the big incentives in the plan is for companies to walk away from providing health insurance? Second point, on the mandate. This is a bipartisan statement because both sides, frankly, miss this issue in a very important sense. Neither Democrats nor Republicans spent nearly enough time thinking about the constitutionality of what was going on. We were arguing about money because money is important. We were arguing about structure and size because that's important. But, Jim, very few folks in our ranks, and I'll give some of our colleagues credit, but very few folks in the Congress were saying we need to step back and ask first principles. Do we even have the authority to do it? There's a wonderful lady running for Congress in Utah named Mia Love who's going to make history out there if she wins. When people ask her, what's your philosophy of government, she says three things. First of all, is it sustainable? Second of all, can we afford it? Third of all, is it in my jurisdiction to do it? We need Mia Love in Congress, if I can give her that shout out, because not enough congressmen think like that. Even if it's sustainable, even if you can afford it, which by the way you can't with Obamacare, you still got to ask the basic question, do we have the authority to do it? And if government can say to you, you have to buy health insurance, regardless of your family situation, regardless of what you choose, there is nothing in the consumer market the government cannot compel.
Well said. Well said.
Nick, do you have a question?
Yeah.
Let's take one more from Nick. Go ahead.
Congressman Jordan, you talked a lot about the DOE loan guarantee programs. I'm interested in this because I'm an energy policy analyst here at the Heritage Foundation, and you have even Republicans supporting these programs because if they benefit from these programs by having a company come and build their plant in their district, they're going to support it. They're going to pretend that this money fell from the sky and say it created jobs in their district. So while the scandal and everything is interesting, how do we get to both Democrats and Republicans that this policy is misguided and whether the program or not is successful, that it's a waste of taxpayer money?
Right. That's the point. We should have never started down this road. But unfortunately, it's not just the energy program. It was TARP, it was auto bailouts, it was and on. Never start down this road. And the simple point is what Artur just said. We don't have the money. You can't do it. It's not only it's not sustainable. It's not productive. Capital. It actually hurts other green energy companies because they can't get private capital because it's almost like you got to have this stamp of approval from the government to get private dollars. Just bad across the board. It's why you just got to stop it. It doesn't work. You got to stop it, and we're trying to highlight all that.
Congressman Jordan, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Jenny Beth is going to offer a few comments in just a moment, but I wanted to make sure that we played for you a new video on the energy front. Nick Loris, who just asked that last question, actually traveled with Johnny Russell and my colleague Brandon Stewart to North Dakota recently to interview some folks to see the economic boom that they're experiencing. So if we could cue that up. And Johnny, did you just want to say anything? Or should we play
yeah,
it?
just real quick. I think this video speaks for itself. Really talks to the hope that exists when the government isn't standing in the way of private markets and hard work and individuals. So without further ado, we'll let you guys watch this, and please share it with your networks and tweet at IER Energy. Thanks.
The oil boom, maybe an oil boom.
Where else in the country do you have 1% unemployment? Where else in the country can you find a good paying job? Now, you have to work hard. They're not easy jobs. Many of you work hard, you put in a lot of hours, but you really can get caught up on paying off debts and starting over in life.
We didn't have to file bankruptcy. I mean, this is the American way. If you can still put your boots on, you go to work and you do it, and you provide. And there's a lot of people doing just that.
I am from Newport Beach, California, and came up here with my daughter to Tioga, North Dakota to open a restaurant. We saw the opportunity for both of us to come here and make something of it. That really, back in California, the opportunity wouldn't have been such.
In the 90s, people didn't come back to Tioga. It was just, you know, you graduate high school and you just wanted to get out of here as fast as you can, because there was no opportunity. So many more young locals moving back to the area, and because the opportunities are here.
So many people have moved here in the recent past that we are just literally out of housing. A lot of construction going on. It's just that when you build homes for 4 people, 6 people come.
I was listening to the radio today, and they said if it was a baseball game, we're like maybe in the first inning, maybe going into the second inning as far as this growth out here goes.
Because of the recent oil boom, you know, I think it's all technology. You know, they've always known this Bakken formation is there. They've just never been able to capture the oil from the formation.
I'm a petroleum geologist, live in Tioga, North Dakota. I actually live on a farm northeast of town, and I've been in North Dakota for 33 years. Some people refer to this Bakken as an Oreo cookie. You have these layers of black Bakken shale sourcing, that's the oil source. And when you look at that rock, it is, I mean, it's hard, it's dense, it's tight, but by drilling 2 miles sideways, that's the horizontal component, and then fracking this rock, which just means cracking it, you then draw the oil out of the entire system.
The area that we worry the most about would be the federal government and regulations, specifically the Environmental Protection Agency. We're concerned that the federal government would look at this and say, you know, we're really not sure. So let's put a moratorium while we study it. Well, that would be devastating.
From a science standpoint, I know that we're very safe. Different people have asked me, am I an environmentalist? And my answer is yes, absolutely I am. I'm a farmer. I want good, safe drinking water here. I think that the country can learn by what North Dakota has done.
That's what I would tell Congress. You guys need to come and see this. Come and talk to the people, see what kind of people are here. See what made this country as great as it is. It's hardworking, you know, blue-collar people, not to say that we don't need politicians, but they're not what made this country great. You know, it's people on the ground that made this country great. And North Dakota is full of them.
So we hope that communicates both the process of fracking, but also the great things that are happening there. And as Johnny said, please share it. It's on the Foundry. We've been tweeting about it today. It's been great to work with IER on that project. Concluding things today is our good friend Jenny Beth Martin. She's the co-founder of Tea Party Patriots. She's somebody who's been involved and active in the Tea Party movement right from the start. First inspired by Rick Santelli, and then shortly thereafter organized a rally in Georgia in which she brought together people and really has been a champion for the values that we care about so dearly at Heritage. I'll let Jenny offer her remarks. Please welcome her.
Thank you. Okay, so while many in Congress were not asking about the constitutionality of Obamacare, people around the country were. And we have maintained that the law is unconstitutional, especially the individual mandate. And when we've seen from polling this year that 80% of Americans think the individual mandate is unconstitutional, clearly the people in the Tea Party movement and the people in this room are making a difference, and we're bringing our attention as a nation back to our founding document, to the Constitution. And that's what we're doing at Tea Party Patriots. Our core values have remained the same since we started: fiscal responsibility, constitutionally limited government, and free markets. We are working this year to make sure that we create a mandate for these core values. So if what Congressman Jordan alluded to happens in November and voters vote for Republicans to maintain control of the House and Republicans to control the Senate and the White House, we don't go back to what happened in the early 2000s. What happened then when Republicans were in control of everything was the spending went out of control and we strayed from our Constitution. So we want to make sure that we create a mandate to balance the budget in 5 years or less without raising taxes, a mandate for full repeal of Obamacare regardless of what the Supreme Court does, and a mandate to roll back the regulations so that free markets can work. Our country has created tremendous things against tremendous odds, from the birth of our country to defeating Nazism, putting man on the moon, defeating communism and the Cold War. Our free markets have created light bulbs, televisions, the personal computer, the iPhone, the iPad, and Google. And we can do this. We can balance our budget. We can restore our economy, and we can make sure that the government gets out of the way so that free markets work again. Thank you. Is that it?
Well, if anyone has any announcements, feel free to make them now. Anyone? Yeah.
Yeah, I want to yield to Ashley Hartshorn from the Campaign for Limited Government.
Hi everybody, I'm Ashley from the Campaign for Limited Government, and I wanted to invite all of you, your staff, and your interns to a happy hour tomorrow. Oh, thank you. It's at 6 at Tortilla Coast, the one right by the South Capitol Metro stop. Campaign for Limited Government. What we aim to do is empower young people to hold the government responsible. So right now we're working on 3 projects. Our first is to have the states propose or empower the states to force Congress to propose a balanced budget amendment. We're working on military voting rights and going to the GOP convention in August in Tampa. So we'll see you tomorrow, 6 p.m. at Tortilla Coast.
Anybody else? Announcements? Okay, well, see you next week.
Great.
Do you know Kay Carl?
Kay Carl.
Up next on C-SPAN